Hi friends. I hope that you've been able to recognize and celebrate your own sacredness and uniqueness through the last week. And I hope that you're finding it easier and more life-giving to love yourself more intentionally. Today we continue the journey as we explore what it means to listen to ourselves carefully and deeply. So let's center ourselves. Do whatever helps you feel comfortable and grounded, and take a moment to prepare your heart and mind for today's practice. When you're ready, take a moment to check in with yourself. For now, just scan the three main areas of your being. What's happening in your body? What's happening in your heart? What's happening in your mind? And notice anything that rises up in you, and hold it in your heart, in your mind, and even metaphorically in your hands as you take a bit of time just to be with yourself. And now, if it's helpful, you may want to share in this prayer. I give thanks because within me is the divine spirit, the divine voice, the divine wisdom, the divine life. Within me is sacredness, wonder, awe, love, creativity. Within me is a universe, unique, precious, and filled with possibilities. And so today, in gratitude and respect, I choose to love myself, to listen to my inner voice, and to give myself the attention I deserve. One of the tools I find helpful in my own spiritual practice is an app on my iPad called Insight Timer. You might be familiar with it. It's a meditation app with various teachers and guides offering meditations of different lengths, with different purposes and themes. And a few weeks ago, I was using a meditation from one of my favorite teachers, a Canadian woman named Sarah Blondin. It was entitled, I Love You, I'm Listening. Throughout the meditation, Sarah invited her listeners to speak those words to themselves. I love you, I'm listening. And as I said those words to myself, I found emotion was welling up within me. I was really moved. And it wasn't because I was saying I love you to myself. It was that I was actually making the time to listen to myself. And I realized that I haven't done that much in my life. I realized I needed to make listening to myself a regular commitment, because for far too long I had ignored my own voice, and I'd been more concerned with listening to others than to myself. And that needed to change. There are so many voices calling for our attention, so many expectations, responsibilities, and demands we have to meet. It's easy to end up listening to everyone but ourselves, but that's when we lose ourselves. A few weeks ago, we reflected on what we say to ourselves and how often our self-talk is negative, undermining, and destructive. Now, no relationship can survive when we constantly put one another down, and that's true when we're putting ourselves down. But equally, no relationship can survive when we stop listening to one another, and yet that's exactly what we do to ourselves. We change our likes and dislikes according to the preferences of people around us. We do the same exercise as others because that's what we're told we're supposed to do to get healthy. We eat what we're told to eat and wear what we're told to wear. We drive the expected car, live in the expected suburb, work in the expected job. And so many of us have a voice inside us trying to get us to hear what we really need and want, what makes our souls sing. And yet that voice is ignored and silenced. If we're to love ourselves, then we need to be intentional about listening to ourselves. We need to make space and time to listen to that inner voice, to think our own thoughts, feel our own feelings, and discover what makes our bodies vibrate with joy and pleasure. We need to listen to the longings of our hearts, the dreams of our souls, the visions of our minds, and the determinations of our will. And we need to listen to ourselves with the same focus and undivided attention we would give to a loved one. Listening to ourselves isn't just about loving ourselves, it's about opening to the wisdom that will guide us through life's challenges. And it's learning to know ourselves well enough to find a clear vision of our best lives on our own terms, not as defined by our society or by the people around us. So what does it mean to listen to ourselves? How do we make listening to ourselves a consistent and intentional practice? There are so many ways to do this, but today I want to offer just 2 simple practices that can make all the difference in our relationships with ourselves. The first one is the practice of regular check-ins with ourselves. As we go through our days, we navigate all sorts of joys and struggles. Our moods shift and our bodies respond in so many different ways. Our breathing deepens or gets shallower. Our heart rate speeds up and slows down. Our energy levels rise and fall. Our stomachs tighten and relax. Now, most of these psychological, emotional, and physiological responses go past pretty much unnoticed as we do the work of getting through the day. But when we miss the messages that ourselves send us in all these ways, we lose one of the best resources for navigating our lives and relationships well. And that's why we need a habit of checking in. Now, to begin with, we may need to set alerts on our phones to remind us to pause and take stock of what's happening within us through the day. But we also need to work at learning to check in any time that we find ourselves stressed or feeling strong emotions or resisting something we need to do or resisting what's going on in our lives. We learn so much when we're able to reflect on our personal state in the midst of our daily challenges. It doesn't have to take long, but a quick personal check-in should include at least the following 5 areas. Our breathing. Is it fast or slow, deep or shallow, free or labored? Our heart rate. Is that fast or slow? Is it erratic or rhythmic? Our clarity of thought or our lack of it. Our emotional state. And growing our language around our emotions and learning to label our emotions accurately and in a detailed way is a great help here. And we'll speak about that a bit more in next week's podcast. And then our energy levels. As we do a scan of these 5 areas, our breathing, our heart rate, our clarity of thought, our emotional state, and our energy levels, we access information about our intuitive selves, and we receive messages about what we're really feeling, thinking, and needing in any moment. And then with this information available to us, we can more easily choose our next response or chart our course through whatever we're facing. If you like, you can even do a quick scan now. Check in with yourself and notice what's happening with your breath, your heart, the clarity of your thinking, your emotions, and your energy levels. Ask yourself what you need to know right now and what your deepest self is trying to say to you. Take a moment and listen to these areas, but also listen to what they are trying to share with you. You can pause the video if that's going to help you. And then the second practice is to give yourself focused time and attention on a regular basis. Daily would be best, but whatever feels right for you is fine. And to do this, you need to create a space where you feel comfortable, safe, and free from distractions and interruptions. Make sure it's a space that feeds your soul and, if possible, that reflects your authentic self in some way. It could be nothing more than a chair placed in a special corner of a room, or if you have one available, it could be a whole room that can be your sanctuary. Apparently, Susanna Wesley, the mother of John and Charles, the great evangelists, used to make time to sit in her favorite chair with her apron pulled over her head. And this was a signal that ensured that her brood of children would leave her alone, except if an emergency came along. And it gave her the space she needed for herself and her spiritual practice. Now, many of us already have a space like this, but if you don't, I encourage you to create one. And then create time to be in the space, in an attitude of reflection and listening to yourself. Journaling can be a very helpful way to listen to what's going on inside of you. But there are other ways to do it. We can ask ourselves questions and then wait and see what responses arise. We can listen to whatever music our soul feels it needs, and then listen to what thoughts and feelings arise as the music plays. We can embrace rituals like using a finger labyrinth, lighting candles, or burning incense or fragrant oils. The point is to give ourselves time, space, and tools to allow our deepest self to speak, knowing that it will be heard. That simple phrase from my insight time and meditation can really be a powerful key to use in times like this. I love you. I'm listening. We all have a treasure of wisdom, strength, creativity, and compassion within us. And too often we give all of these resources away to others, and our souls end up malnourished. It's surprisingly easy to become strangers to ourselves, as I mentioned in a podcast a few weeks ago. But we cannot truly love ourselves if we don't know ourselves, and we can't know ourselves if we never listen to ourselves. But when we make a priority of listening to ourselves and we nurture the self-love that arises from knowing ourselves well, then we become healthier and stronger and more at peace with ourselves. But we also become more able to connect with, to support, comfort, and love those around us. So what would it mean for you to say and practice this simple commitment to yourself? I love you. I am listening. Sit with these thoughts for a little while. What ideas, emotions, physical feelings, or questions are rising up in you? You may want to journal any that you will need to give more attention to through the week. And now take some time to check in with yourself and listen to what your deepest self is saying. I invite you to make a note of at least 3 things that you hear your inner self saying to you now. And I encourage you to make sure that you have a way to remember what you've heard so that you don't lose it. If journaling is your thing, then this would be a great way to connect with and remember what you've heard and to spend time working through these 3 things. But you could just leave a message on your phone or write something on your computer, whatever's going to help you to hold on to it. I encourage you to do that. And then when you're ready, bring your practice to a close in whatever way helps you to prepare for the challenges and joys of your daily living. And as you go through the week ahead, I encourage you to keep listening and keep checking in with yourself. You might also want to write a love letter to yourself, focusing on those 3 things that your inner self told you. And like before, you can write a little each day, or you can write your letter all at once and then just go back to it and read it each day. But again, be intentional about your self-love this week and about the difference it makes in your life. And that's the end of today's practice. I hope you found it meaningful and helpful. What is your experience of listening to yourself? What practices do you use to check in with yourself and listen to your inner self? I'd be grateful if you would share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing this practice. Thanks for your time and your attention. And see you next time.